Today's podcast, a lot of segments, old school radio style here. So there's a lot that I want to get to. And it's not the first half of Game 5 in Miami. Boston takes a 3-2 lead on the Heat. This is another ugly one for the most part, except for a big third quarter from Boston and then a little later stretch there. That was pretty impressive from the two wing scores from Boston. So let's just start at the half. It's 42-37. I, like you, just sitting there probably going, my God, like that wasn't fun to watch. I mean, people were really hammering this game on social media, not having a great time. Fewest points scored combined in an Eastern Conference Finals first half in 8 years. Tatum 1-9 to start the game, 1-5 from three. That's a little bit into the third. And then at one point, I think Miami had missed 13 straight shots. Miami shot 17% in the third quarter. Jimmy Butler was the only starter to actually make a field goal in the entire third quarter, the only starter that made one. So we're left to try to figure out what this is. I actually don't think this is that complicated. I really don't. The fact that Hero's now missed 2 games because of the groin injury, Lowry, who is not even close to being, somebody that's just, you have to be honest with how you defend, like there's some players you just straight up ignore, and it's really hard to hide any of those guys in a good playoff series anymore. The game, I think, there's a bunch of different things you'd love to do with your roster in a perfect world. A playable big, a backup big, and a small lineup, combo guards that can both set each other up and are okay with that role as opposed to wanting to ISO the entire time, switchable wings that can shoot, like these are all the things that you would love to have on a to-do list if you were building a great basketball team. And one of my favorite things that I think is really the point is how many different players can you have that can initiate their own offense without it being a complementary offense and not overlapping offense where you have too many guys, because that's a really weird balance where you go, can I build a team like the Toronto Raptors at 1-19? Can I have a team where there's a bunch of players that can initiate their own offense, but not so many players that initiate their own offense that they're only good with the basketball? And the reason I bring this up is the Heat have very limited options in this capacity at this point. If you look at the third and fourth guys from Boston, if you just go playoff scoring right now, that's Smart and Horford. So if you think, okay, after Brown and Tatum, who are the third and fourth scorers that generally in a given night are taking some of the other shots? And by the way, with Boston, you probably have more than that. Grant can go off, as we saw against Milwaukee. Derek White was very aggressive last night. At this point, if you're third and fourth or Horford, Smart versus with Miami, because after Butler and Bam, like it's Strus and Oladipo, that's a problem, okay? Butler had 70 points combined in games 1 and 2. He's had 27 total points the last 3 games, 10 of 40 from the field. Is he hurt? The is he hurt stuff in the playoffs is really difficult. It really depends on whether or not you like the player, if we're all being honest. Hey, I really like this guy. Something's wrong. It can't be him, I don't think that Jimmy Butler would ever be in a playoff game where he didn't feel comfortable. Okay, there are other players that I think have a certain level of stature that I've said for years, I don't really know if that guy's all that thrilled to be out there right now. I would never question Jimmy Butler on any of that stuff. I also think there's an adjustment to Butler that we've seen from game 1, the rest of the series too, is like, stay on the ground. Stay on the ground. Don't let him initiate the contact and live at the free throw line and hunt for free throws. I also think Lowry too, last night was, I'm not going to say I was sad for him because he's made me so mad so many nights over the last few years of watching him get this stuff called, but they're not calling it when he falls down now. Because it's like, well, if you can't make a shot, we're not going to give you any of this stuff. So even though the third quarter was dominant for Boston, really I thought the stretch was pretty impressive. Brown hits a 3, Tatum hits a 3, Tatum hits that step back fadeaway in the paint over Butler. Brown hits another 3, Brown hits a 3, then he had the dunk. That got it to 83-60, and that's the game. And it could be, looking back, where you see Miami lost the Eastern Conference Finals. That stretch right there. Is it dramatic? Maybe, but it also feels accurate. Because I don't know where the scoring's coming from Miami. I mean, does Hero come back? Does everybody look really good? Backs against the wall, tough DNA team. Game 6, get one at Boston. Saying it out loud doesn't feel likely. But again, I wouldn't say it's impossible, but it doesn't feel likely. And Miami, I had enough concerns about their scoring overall to begin with when they were healthy. Because they were not one of the higher offensive output teams with a lot of different options. Let's also talk about Bam. The final numbers here, he's 18-10. But he doesn't like some of these matchups. And that's why on Tuesday when I talked to Sedano, where I thought, is he somebody that nationally people like more than locally? But then I think he took that as now, a Heat thing, and nobody respects Bam. And Bam played that card quite a bit too on the Defensive Player of the Year stuff, which was nonsense because he just missed too many games, which we have covered before on the podcast. But I think whenever we start to talk about somebody like, who's awesome, who everybody would want. And by the way, everybody should want a Bam Adebayo on their team. Okay. But you can tell there are certain matchups, whether it was Horford at times or if Rob were lurking, or even a couple times they had to put Grant on him, where Bam didn't always love it. Like Bam without momentum on the catch, there are times where I felt like he was hesitant to score. The final numbers look okay. He got like 8 points in the fourth quarter when it looked like, the game was over, but Miami actually had a moment there with like 3:40 left where you go, wait, is Miami going to make this a game and like get back into it? But you're just like, where's the scoring coming from? Like, how can they sustain outscoring Boston 20-10 over the last 4 minutes? That doesn't seem likely based on anything we've seen. Which again, is still funny that Miami was up at the half here, but I felt like as bad as Boston played, you're thinking Miami should be up way more in this game. So I think there's a bigger Bam conversation about watching him every night. Or maybe some of you, watching him more closely now this entire time. Because when you hear about how great somebody is, I think we all default to how come this guy isn't scoring more? How come he's not being more aggressive? How come he's not initiating more things? Especially the way that we saw him in game 3. But I'm telling you, watch for it in game 6. There's certain times where he'll get it and he'll be like, Horford's up on him. Horford's very good at not giving up ground. So if you try to dribble at him, he just goes sideways with you. It's incredible. He's still doing this at 35. It was one of the great things about him against some of the other bigs. Now, again, bigs aren't exactly the guys putting it between their legs and shooting from 3 and all that kind of stuff. I mean, between Embiid, Jokic is just a freak in a different way. Towns scoring. We don't have a ton of bigs. You're just going, hey, score a ton. Even Ayton, who is just a different offensive player than Bam. There's plenty of stretches there where like this guy doesn't do anything on offense because it's just not the way teams run their offenses anymore. The final stat here for the Heat that's just gross. There's no really other way to put this thing. The backcourt here, starting backcourt for the Heat, that's Lowry and Strus. They have one basket in the last 2 games. One basket. They are 1 for 28 and 1 for 19 combined in the last 2. So good luck winning any playoff games against a really good defense like Boston with those kinds of numbers.